Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. What is going on, my people? Guys, I am super pumped up to chat with you guys today on a very similar topic to a couple weeks ago. And here's the thing, it doesn't make sense logically, but that's why we're going to attack this one a little bit more from the logic side today. But really, it's this idea you have to have it all figured out. You have to have personally gone through something. You have to know everything before you can actually start leading and helping others. That's why today in this podcast, I'm going to show you how you can get started helping people now, no matter where you are, so that you don't have to wait before you master a certain skill in order to make an impact that you want to make in the world. So here's the thing. And I know I kind of throw out universal beliefs here that I hear more and more, but this is one that that really strikes near and dear to my heart. And that is thinking that you need to know it all before you can help people is the worst way of actually being able to help anyone. I mean, in reality, if you think that you have to know it all before you help people, you'll never be able to help any human on the planet, right? Now, I get why that you might feel like you need to learn more, that you might need to experience more, that you might need to have more successes behind you. But it's only because our brain is actually programmed to keep us safe that it really I guess it really connects with a lot of people. Our brains immediately go to whatever it possibly can to get us to not to take action. And so one of the ways it does that is tricking us into thinking that we have to have it all figured out. Now, if this were the case, and you can see this logically, nobody would be able to help anybody with anything, because you can't get good at something without actually experiencing maybe some setbacks, maybe some failure, maybe trying things that you've never done before. But here's the thing, if our brain constantly thinks and tries to trick us into thinking that we just don't have it all figured out yet, it will prevent us from actually going out there and acquiring the skills that we need to. So there's always a first, right? There's always a first time when you do something. And when you think about it, I don't know about you, but when I'm talking about the things that make the biggest impact or have made the biggest impact in your life, have they been the things that have just instantaneously came to you where it just worked itself out? Or was it the things that you struggled with, that you tried for the first time, that you didn't succeed with, that now people might even be asking you to help them with? And you might have this belief that but you haven't reached your goal yet, so you can't help them until you reach that goal. But in reality, like I said, that's just our head voice kind of trying to keep us trapped. So I really want to help you using 3 different tips here today so that you can get beyond this. Because if you can see logically, it doesn't make sense. If we really want to help people, we don't have to help people get to a place that we've never been to. We just help people get to where we currently are right now. And there's always people who, no matter where you are, people who would wish to have what you have, wish to have developed themselves into the person that you are here today. As opposed to thinking that we have to get everybody to a place that we've never been to, or get everybody to an entirely different level that we've never experienced. So I want to give you 3 different tips to get past this logically, because here's the thing. I talked a little bit about this. Tip number 1 is going to be using logic. So the reason why, if we don't use logic, we can kind of have our limiting beliefs get trapped and really feel no, this is just the way that it has to be. But when we use logic, what we're doing is we're kind of uprooting whatever that limiting belief is, whatever that thing that's preventing us from actually going out there and helping humans, right? And so when we figure out and think about how we can think about this logically, which I already have a little bit here on this podcast, we can uproot that limiting belief. Otherwise, if we have this limiting belief that we have to know it all, we have to do it all, it has to be perfect before we actually go out there and do it, throwing some positivity on top of it, throwing some great affirmations on top of it are not going to do anything, because you have to get that thing uprooted in order for you to be able to succeed. Now, this isn't with every single one of the beliefs that you have, but the ones that are the limiting beliefs, the ones that are really deeply rooted, they're not ones that just focus on one area of your life. It's actually something that is universal, that is holding you back. We actually had a master coach call this morning where I teach master coaches or develop coaches into master coaches. And we were kind of talking about this. The end result of that call was just somebody talking about when they go to sit down and write a post for social media, and they have this thought that hey, this has to be perfect. And we worked through the entire process, and we really were able to help her uproot this belief that she had about everything needs to be perfect. Now, if you think about that, you're like, well, that's just one instance when you're talking about like posting on social media, but there's a belief there that everything has to be perfect, that person might have flowing through other areas of their life. It could be with their parenting, it could be with their career, it could be with their business, it could be with their health, it could be whatever. Like if I'm not perfect, then it's not even worth doing. And that is how we can uproot that, because it doesn't make sense that everything needs to be perfect, right? As a matter of fact, like so many of our flaws are like that thing that we need to experience in order to be able to grow more, to be able to help more people, is that pain. I know for me personally, going through a lot of pain of like constantly working, constantly like putting things off, constantly like talking myself out of doing things, actually helped me to create this book, which is Becoming a Master of Coaching Yourself, right? And if I had not been a master of coaching myself, if I had not like actually gone through that struggle, I would have never been able to write a book like this, talking to other people about coaching themselves, right? So it was that process of me having to stumble through it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to use logic. Like I said, you got to uproot that belief, uproot that limiting belief so that you can plant a new one there, all right? Now, we talk a lot about in our Push Coach certification, we talk a lot about head versus heart. And I'm not going to give you a complete breakdown right here. Otherwise, this would be like a 3-week course. But really, like our head is there and designed to keep us safe. So anytime it can throw a limiting belief, it can throw a thought that's out there that will get you to stay comfortable, will get you to stay in your old habits. That is your head speaking, and your head's doing it just for mere survival tactics, all right? But when you understand that, and you understand there's a different place where your heart, where you come from your heart, things that are based off of purpose, of hope, of potential, of love, of abundance, those things that when your kid comes up to you and asks you if it's possible for them, and you're like, 100% it's possible for you, that is leaning into your heart voice. And when you can find your heart voice, you can actually do a great job of flipping from your head to your heart once you are able to uproot that limiting belief, all right? So tip number 1 is attack your limiting beliefs with logic, because limiting beliefs don't make any sense. When you start to attack them and punch holes in them, it gives you the ability of being able to uproot that and plant a new one there, all right? Tip number 2. Tip number 2 is reflect on how far you've come. Now, this is a heart voice, all right? So I don't want you to get into this tip before you've actually been able to punch some holes into your limiting belief, and it makes sense that that is not the truth, right? But once you do, you can help yourself flip that. And how I like to do that is really talk about a purpose-based question like this, like reflect on how far you've come. What have you been able to accomplish? What are some things that you struggled with that like people would love to be able to get through themselves right now, right? Maybe something related to your health, maybe something related to your connection, to your family, to your work, to your business, to whatever. Like what do you have right now that you've been able to accomplish that other people would be like, yes, I would love to be, to get your help with that. Now, not all of the people, right? I think that's what our brain tries to do. It tries to say, well, we've got to help all the people. Well, you don't. You just have to help enough people get to where you are, from where you were, right? And when you think about that, it just really helps simplifies it for you, and it brings you back into your heart. So you have this really purpose-based question of like, just reflect on how far you have come. And that gets you to reframe everything. I talk about this a lot, but when you are in your heart voice, that's the best time for you to do the things that are the most important, like connecting with your family, like posting on social media, like doing stuff in your business, like doing live calls, doing podcasts. Because if you're flowing everything through your heart, it's contagious and it flows through this conversation. It flows through whatever it is you're touching. And it just like literally helps lift up the energy and the excitement and that other person's heart voice. But when you're thinking in terms of like your head voice, that's not the time for you to go out there necessarily and create a bunch of stuff, because you're coming from this place of negativity until you get the ability of understanding how to flip that to your heart voice, all right? So tip number 2, like I said, is reflecting on how far you've come. The third tip is maybe there is a skill that you want to learn. Maybe there is a skill that you want to like develop to the next level. Now, what most people do is when they think about a skill that they want to develop, they think that, or they convince themselves that they need to like be something, or they need to have something before they can actually start to develop that skill. So they need to have more time. They need to be able to have more money. They need to be able to like have their kids return back to school. And so it limits them to actually learning that skill. So in reality, they end up putting it off forever. And because they have this thought in their head that says, hey, you know what, I need to develop a new skill before I help people. And their other limiting belief is like, well, you don't have the time or the energy to develop that skill. you can kind of see how like it literally spirals like this. That's why when you get like, you have the ability of understanding true coaching, that you can literally unlock the doors, because all of those things are not true. They're called beliefs for a reason. They're not truth, right? Truth is something that universal that everybody can agree on. A belief is just something that you currently believe right now, but if I give you more information, or I poke different holes in it, or I give you a different idea, you could make a decision to actually change those beliefs, all right? So instead of putting it off forever, I want you to say, I want to attack that limiting belief and get you to jump in and start learning it. One of the things that this, like for me personally, really helped me a lot was, like I said, life coaching. Is this idea of like, hey, I want to learn how to be able to help people get not only better results, but actually make bigger transformations when they do work with me. And so one of the things I was thinking about is like, I want to become a life coach. Now at the time, I wasn't doing what I do now, which I actually have a life coach school that I co-created with my mentor. And so I was going out in the world looking for all these different life coaches schools. And I found one that was $20,000. And it was an incredible school. But I had this thought that like, I just don't have the time and I don't have the money to actually put into that. And it was this vicious cycle. It actually was like about 2.5 years before I finally said, you know what? I'm going to make this happen. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to do it. I'm going to attack my limiting beliefs that I don't have time or don't have money, and I'm going to make this a priority. And I started to think in terms of my heart voice, in terms of like, hey, what kind of impact will I be able to make when I develop this skill? What kind of parent will I be for the kids? What kind of husband will I be for Teresa if I understand this skill? What kind of leadership growth will I experience at my LAPD career if I am able to like really develop this skill? And I was leaning into my heart and really found that it wasn't that I didn't have time. I just needed to really prioritize my time, which was funny because even when I have limiting beliefs right now, I constantly still feel like I don't have time. I don't have money for those things. And it's kind of like this aha moment where it still will keep coming up, right? They're limiting beliefs for a reason. Sometimes they just keep coming up and up and up. It's just when you can become aware of them. So maybe it is a skill. Maybe tip number 3 is maybe it is a skill you want to develop. How can you attack whatever it is that's preventing you from doing that to actually make that thing happen? Now, I understand you'll have to make some adjustments. I understand that you're going to have to make some tweaks along the way. I understand that you might have your head voice that's going to be talking to you, especially sometimes even after you sign up, to develop this skill. Sometimes it is that your brain will kind of try and get you off course. I 100% understand that, and it's supposed to be there. It's supposed to be like that. But for me personally, understanding that that's what was happening and having a different path, having a systematized way of doing that, for us it's the push method to really pull out what I term as the new story, is so extremely powerful. And let me tell you, being the person who I could talk myself out of doing anything. I was 100 pounds overweight. I was giving my everything to my career. I was physically and mentally like exhausted. I had massive amounts of stress. My son was born he was born, he had to spend 73 days in the NICU because he was 1 pound 9 ounces. Like all of these things were kind of like compounding. And I was using those as my reasons why I shouldn't do something. When in reality, what I did is I could flip it and use them for the reasons why I must. And by doing that, that's how I was able to accomplish that. And I'm no different than you. I'm no different than any of you guys. All right. So 3 tips. One more time. Number 1 is use logic. So you want to attack that limiting belief with logic. So you have this thought, you know what? I have to be able to develop a skill before I can help more people. Logically, do you? Yes, you may want to develop a skill, but for where you are right now, like how many people could you help get to where you currently are, who are like waiting for that to come across their newsfeed, waiting for that help, right? And you can be that person for them now. And as a matter of fact, it'll help you develop your skills even more. Second tip is reflect on how far you come. Sometimes we've got to realize not only how far we've come, but what we've been able to accomplish. When our brain goes into the fact that we haven't been able to accomplish a lot of stuff and we are not going to be able to help a lot of people, I really want you to challenge that. I want you to look at that and go, that's not the case at all. Like maybe in this one specific area I haven't, but how have I been in a similar situation, maybe in a different area of my life, but actually I have been able to succeed with that. And being able to realize how far you've come will give you that heart voice and that energy that you need to really show up. And then number 3 is actually find a skill that you want to develop. Think about a skill that you want to develop. And when I say a skill, I don't mean just saying, I want to get better in business, but what about business do you want to develop? Do you want to develop your sales? Do you want to develop your connection? Do you want to develop your communication? And really finding somebody that can help you do that to develop that skill is not only an incredible thing because you're going to end with that skill, which is going to be something you're going to be able to use in multiple areas. By the way, life coaching is that thing for me that literally I use in every single area, and it helps me tremendously. And I didn't realize that. My head was trying to tell me about like, oh, this is too long, too time consuming. You don't have enough money. But in reality, when I thought about like the impact it would make in all of these different areas, I was like, I have to do this. I want to become that person. And I learned the skill. And what's crazy is like when I was in the process of learning the skill, how much more excited I was about posting, how much more like excited I was about talking to people, about getting people into programs, about doing that stuff. Cause I'm like, this is going to be so impactful. It's already been impactful. And I've only been in this life coach school for like a week or two. What am I able to now give people? And it's just such a different experience when you're actually growing. I know you guys have probably heard that a lot, right? It's the experience of like personal growth in your life is one of those things that gives back in multiple different areas. I mean, even listening to podcasts, I know for me personally, whenever I get off a podcast, and it's been one where I feel like lit me on fire, and not everyone has to light me on fire, but when I feel that, it literally flows through everything that I do for that whole rest of the day, because that's what personal growth does. It kind of challenges you sometimes, but it also gets you to come out better on the other side so that you can spread that around to other people. Okay, guys, Monday, let's finish this out with a quote. Leaders take ownership of their part of the equation, especially when it would be easier to blame others. So leaders take ownership of their part of the equation, especially when it would be easier to blame others. I appreciate you guys for being the leaders out there, for taking that responsibility, because you cannot change anything that you don't take responsibility for. And I just want to say like how much I appreciate you for you being the leader out there when we need it the most. All right, guys. Once again, appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Stay safe and healthy. All right, bye, everybody.